Emily's life could be measured in storms and sunrises. She was born on a bleak winter night in a tiny house that shook with each gust of wind. Her father had left before she took her first steps, and her mother, while loving, often struggled with sadness and empty cupboards. As a little girl, Emily learned early that life wasn't always gentle. She wore hand-me-down dresses and patched-up shoes, and at age 8 she quietly took on odd jobs pulling weeds for neighbors, folding laundry just to help buy bread. Yet, if you saw her then, you'd remember her not for the weight she carried, but for her spirit. She had a spark in her eyes and an infectious laugh. Even when nights were cold and dinner meager, Emily would hum her baby brother to sleep, her small voice steady against the uncertainty. In those childhood years, hardship planted the first seeds of resilience in her heart. She didn't know the word for it yet, but every challenge became a lesson in endurance. As Emily grew, the challenges grew with her. At 16, she lost her mother to a long illness. That loss was a storm unlike any she had weathered before. In the quiet after the funeral, she found herself the sole guardian of her brother, who was only 6. There were moments she felt she couldn't possibly go on. She would wake up paralyzed by grief and fear of the future. But each morning, she heard her little brother's footsteps and saw his trusting eyes, and something in her refused to give up. She rose each day to make him breakfast, to get him to school, then herself to classes and a part-time job. There were days she failed tests because she hadn't had time to study. Nights she silently cried from exhaustion after her brother fell asleep. What kept her going was a promise she whispered to herself in the darkest moments. "We will survive this. I will make sure we're okay." That promise became her North Star. She finished high school against all odds, sometimes doing homework by candlelight when the electricity was cut off, sometimes studying in the hospital waiting room when her brother had asthma flares. Graduation day came with a mixture of joy and ache. Joy because she made it, ache because her mother wasn't there to see it. But as she crossed the stage in her ill-fitting second-hand graduation gown, she held her head high. The audience never knew that under her gown, her knees were shaking with both nerves and pride. In her heart, she carried the memory of her mother's gentle encouragement, and she imagined her mother's voice saying, "Keep going, my brave girl." And so she did. In her 20s, life tested Emily in new ways. She ventured into the world with her brother in tow, playing the role of both sister and parent. They moved to a new city so Emily could take a job as a receptionist while attending community college at night. Money was tight, and time even tighter. There were moments of setback that felt like life was pushing her underwater. A car breakdown that drained her savings, a failed exam when work and caregiving left her no time to study, a dear friend's betrayal that left her questioning her trust in others. Each time, Emily felt the familiar temptation to despair. Each time, after a good cry or a day of feeling defeated, she would wipe her tears and start again. She would remember how far she'd come and realize she owed it to herself and to her brother not to surrender. One particularly difficult night, Emily sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, unpaid bills spread out before her. Her brother, now 12, had outgrown another pair of shoes, and the rent was overdue. Emily's hands trembled as she tried to calculate a budget that simply didn't add up. She felt a hot wave of hopelessness wash over her. That night, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like to just quit, to close her eyes and let someone else worry about it all. She cried until she had no tears left. Then, in the stillness, she looked over at the small living room where her brother's school pictures lined the wall, marking each year of his growth. She recalled the little boy who asked her once, "Are we going to be okay, Em?" and how she had hugged him and answered without hesitation, "Yes, we will." In that moment, Emily felt a familiar resolve kindle inside her. She might not have much, but she had determination and she had love. Early next morning, she reached out for help, something that took as much courage as everything else, because being resilient had sometimes made her think she had to do everything alone. She spoke to her landlord and asked for an extension, and because he'd seen her struggle and persevere, he granted it kindly. She talked to a counselor at school who helped her find a small grant. She patched together solutions where it seemed none existed. Each problem that had threatened to drown her became manageable when met with creativity and grit. In her 30s, life's landscape changed for Emily. Her brother, now grown, went off to pursue dreams that she had helped keep alive for him. On the day she dropped him off at college with a trunk full of second-hand books and neatly folded thrift store clothes, he hugged her and said, "I am who I am because of you." The truth of that moved her to tears. She realized that all those years of fighting to stay afloat had not only built strength in her, but also in him. She had broken the cycle of despair and given him hope. Watching him walk into his dormitory, Emily felt an immense wave of fulfillment. It was a sunrise moment, a light breaking after so many storms. But life wasn't done testing her. A few years later, Emily fell deeply in love and married a man named Marcus. For a time, it seemed fate was finally handing her some ease and happiness. They laughed often, built dreams of a family, and Emily thought perhaps her hardest days were behind her. Then came another storm. Marcus was diagnosed with a serious illness that turned their world upside down. For 2 years, they rode the roller coaster of treatments and hopeful highs, followed by devastating lows. Emily stayed by his side through it all, holding his hand at countless doctor's appointments and whispering encouragement when his spirits waned. She was terrified of losing him, and some nights, after he fell into restless sleep, she would sit on the bathroom floor, biting her fist to keep from sobbing aloud. It felt so cruel after everything, to possibly lose the person who had brought light to her life. Yet, even in this, her resilience shone. She became the pillar for both of them, even when she felt like crumbling. She educated herself about the illness, organized support from friends and community, and found strength in the smallest of victories. A good test result here, a day of Marcus feeling a bit better there. There were moments she needed to lean on others, like the night she called her brother just to hear his voice and cried to him in a way she hadn't allowed herself to in years. "I can't lose him," she wept. Her brother softly replied, "You taught me that we can survive anything, and you will survive this, no matter what. But he's strong because he has you. Don't give up hope." Those words echoed in her, reminding her of the very lessons she had instilled. Miraculously, Marcus pulled through. The illness went into remission. On the day the doctor declared him stable and healthy, Emily felt a surge of gratefulness so powerful she thought her heart might burst. They had been through the fire together, and both of them had been forged stronger, their bond unbreakable. At home, Marcus held Emily close and said, "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. You never gave up on me." Emily simply pressed her face into his shoulder, hiding the tears of relief. It was Trush hadn't given up. That stubborn spark within her, that refusal to yield, had carried them both through. In her late 40s, one quiet evening, Emily sat on the porch of her home watching the sunset. Life was by no means perfect. There were everyday struggles, worries about the future, occasional pain from old wounds, but she was at peace. Her brother was thriving in his career and starting a family of his own. Marcus was healthy and humming a tune as he watered the garden. Emily sipped a cup of tea and reflected on her journey. She felt the presence of every past version of herself, the determined child, the grief-stricken teen, the overworked young adult, the fearful wife, and she wanted to reach back in time and tell each one of them, "See, we made it. We're still here." She thought about what resilience truly meant. It wasn't just surviving, it was the ability to find light in darkness, to keep love and hope alive through the worst storms. It was in the way she always looked for a solution, the way she allowed herself to feel pain but not be defined by it, and the way she chose empathy and kindness despite having faced harshness. Each trial she endured had, in retrospect, gifted her something: empathy, strength, wisdom, or courage. The poverty had taught her resourcefulness and compassion for others in need. The loss of her mother taught her to cherish loved ones and to be fiercely independent. Raising her brother taught her selflessness and determination. Facing Marcus's illness taught her the depth of her capacity to hope and to fight with love as her weapon. Emily's phone buzzed on that porch. Rylinga text from a friend going through a hard time, asking for advice. Once, Emily might have felt she had nothing to offer. Now, she found that she had a well of experience to draw from. She replied with words that were gentle and encouraging, telling her friend to hold on, to believe in her own strength, and that she wasn't alone. As she sent the message, Emily realized she had become the kind of person she herself had often needed: a beacon in the dark. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the first stars appeared. Marcus finished watering and came to sit beside her, their shoulders touching. Without needing to ask, he knew where her mind had wandered. "Proud of yourself?" he teased softly, knowing she rarely took credit for her extraordinary resilience. Emily chuckled. "Not proud, just thankful." She took his hand, her heart full. "We've been through a lot," she added. He nodded. "More than a lot. And we're still standing." Emily looked down at their hands, fingers entwined, and nodded. "Still standing," she echoed quietly. And not just standing, she thought standing tall. Like an old tree that had weathered every season, scarred by lightning and wind, but still growing, still providing shade and beauty. Her scars were many, but they told a story of survival and of refusing to be broken. That night, before bed, Emily caught her reflection in the mirror. There were lines around her eyes and a few strands of grey in her hair. She smiled at the reflection. "You're a survivor," she whispered to herself, in a tone that was loving, not defiant. It was an affirmation of fact and an acknowledgement of all she had overcome. Lying in bed, Emily listened to the steady breathing of her sleeping husband and felt an overwhelming peace. Life would continue to have its ups and downs, that she knew for certain, but equally certain was her faith in her ability to meet whatever came, to bend with the winds without snapping, to find the flicker of light in the deepest dark. That unyielding resilience, born of every challenge she had faced, was the quiet strength that guided her through each new day. And in that knowledge lived a profound serenity. Come what may, her resilient heart would keep beating, and she would keep rising, again and again, like the sun each morning, painting the world anew with light after even the longest night.